What's up, bikers? I'm Robert. This is the Biker Bar Podcast, episode 126. Wow, that's crazy. How many times have I said, wow, that's crazy at the beginning of this episode? Anyways, 126 episodes. Today, we're going to have Stan's No Tubes on. Super excited to talk to them. If you guys aren't familiar with them, I don't know what rock you're hiding under. So before we go ahead and get started, however, do me a favor. If you have been watching this show and you're doing it on YouTube and you haven't hit the subscribe button, do that. Hit the subscribe button. It's really simple. Little button down there makes the little subscribe button number go up, and then I get happy and I keep doing this, and that's good times. If you have and you like this, though, you can hit the thumbs up. If you're listening to this on a podcast, do me a favor, write a review. I haven't swung by Apple Podcast this week to see if anybody wrote one from the last week when I was talking to you guys about it. But it'd be rad if there was one. 5-star review. If it's a 4-star review, you're thinking it's probably not worth your time. I wouldn't do it. But if you want something for free, you can just tune in. You can either download this on your favorite podcast app, whatever, Google, StreamYard, all the players, right? All the big ones. I can't think of the one with the S right now. Why am I drawn? Spotify. There you go. Anyways, if you want something else for free, you can swing by Instagram. Check out at BikerB1 or Facebook at BikerB1 as well. Throwing up pictures and whatever I got going on, and you can go check into that and see what's going on with the channel. That's about it. That's all I got. That's all I got. Oh, if you really, really want to help out, you can swing by Patreon. As little as $1 a month, it helps buy camera gear, put beer in the fridge, keep me talking every week. So it's up to you. Anyways, we'll go ahead and bring on our guest. We got Mike. How's it going, Mike?
Good. How are you doing, Robert?
Man, I am living the dream, right?
Good.
I got a buddy that says nightmares are dreams too.
It's all perspective.
Right. You never know. You never know what's going on. So people that are listening or watching know who you are. Mike, can you introduce yourself? Tell us what you do over there at Stan's.
Yeah. So I'm sitting in State College, PA. So we have 2 offices here on the East Coast and some remote folks. I'm in our State College office, and I've been with Stan's officially 17 years on the payroll.
Oh wow.
The last 9 as president, and holding down the fort as best we can. I had an engineering background. That's how I got involved originally. And I did about 4 years as a consultant when I worked real jobs, and would just help out Stan and Cindy, the founders, nights and weekends, take vacation from the real job to go and work at Interbike or at old Pedro's Fest up in New England and so on. Yeah, been at it for a long time. Have designed a lot of parts back in the day, and thankfully we have other people to do that too. But just herding cats and trying to keep things moving forward.
So you said 17 years. So you're like employee number 2, or?
I don't know the actual number. Honestly, it's a single digit.
Yeah.
But maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Tops.
Yeah. So it's a pretty small crew whenever you joined.
Yeah. And some of those, I think maybe 2 or 3 of those folks are still here as well. So we've got some long tenured folk around here.
Yeah, that says a lot about your company. You know what I mean? So, I think you almost answered one of my first. So there is a stand. There's an actual stand?
Oh yeah. There's an actual stand. So it was kind of his brainchild in the beginning, and his wife Cindy prompted him to actually do something with the idea rather than just use it amongst his friends. So that's kind of what led us into the notubes.com world and early e-com type of setups, and then eventually getting out into dealers and working our way into distribution and OEM and so on. Yeah, there is a stand. They're officially retired now, but just spoke to Cindy this morning. So yeah, they're out there.
Right on. So how did the idea come about? Because it was, I was riding back then, and everybody seemed to be fine with tubes, other than the fact that we had to put them in all the time. And they were a pain in the ass, but you know what I mean? It wasn't like there was like a bunch of people going, man, this is horrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess depends where you rode at the time, right?
Right.
Some
Yeah.
people, would tell you that it was absolutely horrible.
Yeah.
50 psi and pinch flats constantly and thorns and so on. So kind of the original genesis of the idea for stand back then was it's kind of early days of UST, the Mavic Universal Tubeless system that was developed.
Mhm.
And they had partnered with Hutchinson at the time on a couple of tires. And I think Stan had just purchased a new bike and it did not come with tubeless wheels. And he's what we would call one of the original weight weenies of the day, obsessed with the weight of everything. So rather than go out and spend more money on heavier wheels just because they were the new cool thing, he said, what can I do with what I already have? And started tinkering essentially around with different ideas of how to seal those wheels airtight, and then how to deal with the tires, because tire selection was poor. They didn't really work in our area, and they were heavier. They didn't retain air as they should, and it just led into what can we use to seal the tire that will also prevent punctures going forward, and it ended up being a lighter system. And people that are out there that were around for the early days of tubeless know all the trials and tribulations of what fit together and what worked and what didn't, and that's kind of how we evolved with different products through the years.
It's funny because I am, I guess I'm in that old school mentality of, I remember when there wasn't a quote unquote tubeless tire, and people ask me like, oh, well, I want to go tubeless. What do I need to buy? And I'm like, well, you can just buy the stands kit, can't you? Like, because in my mind, all you needed was the tape and the stem, and then the basically the sealant, right? I mean, is that still the case? I mean, obviously the newer tires and stuff like that, and they hold the bead better and stuff like that, but you could still just tape any tire, right?
Yeah, so the earliest of days, we would tape any rim airtight. And at that time, we were using like a 2-tape system, so it was a little more cumbersome. It wasn't kind of designed for the process. And then you would install your tires. It was a standard tube-type tire. You could use a tubeless tire, but that was rare again because the tire selection wasn't very good. And you would try and convert your standard tire. Of course, they were never meant to be tubeless, so the beads weren't sized correctly, maybe not strong enough. The tires were incredibly porous and so on. But that was the very first system: 2 layers of tape and the sealant inside. And sealant, at one time we sold a concentrate that you mixed at home with some instructions we provided, and then everybody thought that was too much hassle, so we did the pre-mixed sealants and started to refine that formulation and so on. And then we kind of moved from there into people remember the rubber rim strip system. So it had an integrated valve stem, and it was like a big rubber band that stretched on the rim. And what we noticed over time was certain tires fit better than others, certain rims were sized better for the conversion, but this rubber rim strip would fill the gap between, you've got like your tire bead and then the bead seat area. That gap would be quite large on a traditional rim of the day. So the rubber strip filled that space and allowed you to run pretty much anything tubeless, and it was easier to inflate, it retained the bead better, so on and so forth.
Right. So and nowadays then it's basically that bead tech is what you're paying for, is like being able to have the bigger bead. And
yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of changes. We could really go down a rabbit hole on how rims have evolved and so on, but rim sizing was better, rim geometry as a whole. The bead seat area was better defined. The tire sizing got better over time and allowed you to eliminate that rubber strip. So you just had that tire bead to rim contact, and creating the same thing. So our little saying here, one of the sales guys came up with, was shape, tape, and sealant. So the shape of the rim is correct, you apply the tape, and then the sealant will take care of the rest. So that's where we're at today with tubeless ready, basically.
Right. And as far as your sealant, you guys have one type of sealant and that's it, right?
We do 2 different formulations for ourselves. We private label for some other folks too with tweaks and adjustments, but we have our standard formulation, which hasn't changed in quite some time. It's a natural latex product. A lot of reasons we do that, with some additives and particulate and so on, that we feel is just the best product for the widest range of uses.
Mhm.
And then we do a race formulation as well. So that was something that we've done for a long, long time, but didn't sell until maybe 5 or 6 years ago, just
Mhm.
under constant questions and pressure from people to get their hands on it. We produced it for race teams. It would always be squirreled away in the World Cup pits or what have you. And people would go, what's that bottle over there? Why does it have something written on it? And that was
Yeah.
our race formulation that we tested with all our sponsored teams. So that is the same base liquid, but it uses twice the normal amount of crystals, what we call sealing crystals, or the particulate, and an additional much larger particulate that helps to seal bigger punctures, cuts, slices, etc. Downsides there, you cannot introduce race sealant through a valve stem like we do with standard sealant. So if you like that clean approach and less mess, use the standard sealant. If you don't mind opening the tire bead, you are going to a race or an event, it means a lot to you. It's your big thing for the year, the enduro, the cross country, what have you.
Mhm.
Go ahead and use race sealant. It doesn't last quite as long in the tire.
Yeah.
And that's because it does start to snowball effectively. What people have noticed through the years and what we affectionately call stanimals,
Yeah.
little shaped monsters that show up from time to time. That's more likely to happen in race sealant.
Yeah. I am not a person that opens my tire up to add sealant very often. And so I've definitely found quite the large Stanimal zoo going on in there a few times. You
Yeah,
guys,
depending on your preference for brand and so on, you can be left with these large particles inside. You'd be left with a very thick layer of sealant just clinging to everything. You could be
Yeah.
left with what looks like a liquid that would be effective in the next puncture, but it's really not. It's just the remaining additives, the latex or what have you, is just clinging to the tire. Some of the ingredients have evaporated, etc.
what's the actual amount of time you're supposed to swap that stuff out?
It's highly variable. I always hate giving that answer, but we were from upstate New York originally, so New York in the winter, it'll last 6, 7, 8 months in a tire, sometimes more. Cool, humid at times, but it depends on where you store the bike, how often you ride, how much did you put in there to start with, how porous was the tire casing, et cetera, et cetera. So someone in Arizona in the middle of summer might only see 3 or 4 weeks before they need to do a refresh. It can vary that much. So we always just encourage people to do a refresh. Open it up, take a look inside, add some if you need to. You don't really have to clean out the old so much as top off what you already have. And then you're back in business. It takes a few minutes, but it's worth the peace of mind, I would say.
Yeah, I definitely need to. What I basically do is keep riding until all the air comes out of my tire when I run something over. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I should put more in.
No, we hear those stories all the time at events and things. Oh, I just had a flat. Well, did you check your sealant? No, I haven't done that in 2 years. Well,
Yeah.
It'll cost you a few bucks, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Or I just keep pumping more in there. And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's got to be out by now. And then I open it up and it's got this like Stanimal the size of my hand in there.
Yeah. I mean, as someone that makes sealant, I'll say go ahead and put in as much as you want. But the truth is, you don't have to do that. You can.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of people out there that add all kinds of crap to their sealant, like glitter and God knows what. What's the official take on that? Does it do anything? Is it ruin the way it works, or
it doesn't ruin anything per se, but you could start to create that Stanimal effect, we'll call it, where things are snowballing and collecting as the sealant, the latex portion dries out. I've seen some crazy things added to sealant through the years. Everything we put in there is a natural product, basically. So if you spill it on the trail, if you have to change a flat in the parking lot, you're not going to hurt anything. You could add some crazy stuff into your sealant that maybe wouldn't be quite as friendly to have laying around in a puddle somewhere. So I'd say that's something to be aware of. Glitters are often plastics and things that we don't necessarily want scattered on our trails, but you're not going to hurt anything. I don't know that you're going to gain anything either.
Yeah. I think everybody's after like, oh, it's going to get this bigger hole or something like that. And
I mean, if you're running like tire whizzes or something, I wouldn't want to add sand to my sealant.
Yeah.
Problems there. Or when you reinflate your tire, you always get a little bit coming back out of the valve. You don't necessarily want that in your pump head or your CO2 head.
Right. What's the craziest thing you've heard? Sand? Was that a real
I mean,
one?
there's sand. I've heard kitty litter. I've heard the glitter, of course. I mean, yeah, you'd be surprised what people come up with.
Yeah, apparently I have a hard enough time just putting sealant in there. So
Right. Yeah, you're not the guy to go looking for new additives.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. So dang, it's interesting what people come up with on their own, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't knock it. That's, essentially how Stan got the idea originally. Was he played around with hundreds of different things until he started to hit on something that worked effectively enough that we could start refining and commercialize. And
Did he have some kind of?
The idea was never to sell it. He was just telling people how to make the product at home themselves. So.
Did he have some kind of background in something that would lead him to try that, or
no,
he's just kind of like
just constant tinkerer? Yeah, it's just the type of guy he is. Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny. Oh man, like 3 times I've come up with this question while you're talking, and I can't remember what the hell it is. So we'll just go ahead.
It'll come to you.
Yeah. Next time I'm gonna write it down. But anyways, so so you guys do the sealant thing for quite some time. I would say, like, how long was it that you guys were doing just sealant until you started to branch off?
I mean, we did kind of various tubeless kits and sealant and things until, I mean, it's probably about 2 years really before we brought another product to market.
Mm-hmm.
2.5 maybe.
What was the year that you guys started? I'm sorry.
It's 2000, late part
2000.
of 2000. Yeah. So the next product that came along, I guess there were a few little things in between, and I'll get the timing wrong, but if you remember, time pedals were pretty big at one point. I still run them, so to me they're still great pedals. But we did a titanium conversion kit for those. That was titanium axles, titanium springs, and aluminum pins that replaced all the seal parts. There was a stock version available with a titanium axle as well, or spindle.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, we did that for a while, and those did really well, but they were expensive to make, and sealant started to take a bigger share of our time. And we did aluminum brake rotors for a long time, and those started pretty early on, which nobody's foolish enough to do these days. But that was really difficult. But they were super, super light, and again, Sam was a weight weenie. I probably did 65 rotor designs over the years. We did out of various aluminums and various plating processes and so on. And they worked. They were just a little sketchy for some situations. But that was kind of fun. And then I guess the first one after that was our first rim model. Mm-hmm. Really, the first one we designed and had extruded, it was terrible. It never saw the light of day. And then the second version of that rim was known as the 355G at the time because it weighed 355 grams, and we're not all that original when it comes to naming products. It's probably the single hardest thing we do is name products.
Right.
So the 355G, and that was one of those rims that used a rubber rim strip. So it had its own strip design and had a pretty unique shape at the time, but it allowed us to do a super light aluminum rim, which kind of put us on the map with rims a little bit, and some early success in the World Cup type racing scene. And then that one sort of led into the first rim that carried one of our patents, which was the Olympic model, which you couldn't call the Olympic model now. The IOC would be all over you really fast. But again, we're not good at naming products. It got the Olympic name because the prototypes were sent to some of the pros we were providing sealant to back in the day, the 2004 Athens Olympics, and a couple of them raced it. Some probably weren't allowed to, but did it anyway. And we theoretically were part of winning 4 medals that year. So was a nice little kickoff to that before that was launched to the public officially. That was 2004 when that one came around.
Yeah, I think the first set of stands that I had probably was like 2007 or 8. And I had the flows.
Okay.
And the aluminum. And I remember asking, because I didn't really know much about building my own wheels at that point in time, and just remember asking around. People were like, man, these things are like rock solid. And I had those wheels for years, and
Yeah.
actually, I think one of them's still hanging up in the garage in here. I never trued them. They were like perfect. They were really good wheels.
Yes, the first, we did the Olympic rim, and then we did a new version of the 355 because we still did rim brake stuff back then. I mean, we're going back a long ways here.
Yeah, we might as well.
Still had a rim brake version, and that was the 355 model, and then we did an arch and a flow. So it took me like 3 years of bugging Stan to say we got to do something more trail oriented. Let's do the flow, what became the flow model. And then that one found early success in downhill racing, which we never anticipated. But I mean, really, really high profile race wins on that model. But if you want to go back that far, that rim was 23 millimeters wide. So
really, the flow was?
Yeah, the flow, that was a big rim. That was a wide rim at the time, and it was winning World Cup downhill races. Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, because I remember back then I was running like 235 tires, and everybody would ask me like why I was running tires so big.
Yeah.
And I'm a big dude, so I would just be like, man, well, if you're as big as me, man, you want as much grip as you can get. Now it's like if I had a 235 on my tire, everybody'd be like, what are you doing with those road bike, those gravel tires on your mountain bike?
Right. Yeah, the Crest Arch Flow has been around now since 2005, 2006, really. That family is still here. I mean, they've been updated a few times, but yeah, those names are etched in.
So you guys then, I mean, not like immediately after that, but somewhere along the line here, you launched the carbon wheel. That's the Baron, right?
We've done a few carbon models. Now, our first one was called the Valor. And everything had the name ZTR tacked onto it, which was an old 0-2 rim because the bike industry needed more acronyms.
Yeah, there you go.
So it was called the Valor. It was our first carbon model. That was 2014. And really successful at launch. We struggled a little bit shortly after launch with some QC issues from our supplier, but we still work with them today. So we worked it out, got this back out onto the market pretty quickly. And then, people just started riding them and raving about the ride quality. So that was really what I call the quest for compliance, which we did cross the line at some point there, but trying to get a more compliant carbon wheel. I think, it's probably revisionist history to some extent, but I think we were really the first people to say carbon wheels are cool. They have some great benefits, but they just ride like rocks. And that was feedback we were getting from a lot of our testers and other riders and so on. And they liked them. It was potentially more durable, potentially lighter, but the ride quality wasn't there. So we were seeking that compliance, and it really came through in that model. People started to kind of take notice of that. And I think 2015, we ended up doing like a commemorative t-shirts. We had 15 cross-country national champions at the elite level globally on Valor wheels.
Oh, wow.
So it really kind of changed things for us on the wheel game a little bit. But since then we've done quite a few other models. The Podium sort of replaced the Valor. And then cross-country segment, we did a Crest Arch, and then came along with a Flow and a Baron, where we kind of partnered with Ibis bicycles on those two models. They had done the wide thing a bit earlier than others, and we worked with the same supplier in Asia. And they like what we did.
You have a Flow that's in carbon as well?
Yes. Yep. There is a Flow model.
So does that have the offset spokes on it as well as the Baron? Or
Flow and Baron both are asymmetric rims.
Yeah.
So the real trick there is there have been plenty of other carbon asymmetric rims, but when you start evaluating them really closely from a tubeless perspective, that asymmetric rim profile with nearly equal spoke tensions does some interesting things with the bead seat geometry. So we really sought to make sure when that wheel is tensioned and ready to install the tire that those beads are at the same height, basically, that the bead seats are at the same height. And a lot of other carbon wheels you find out there that are asymmetric don't do that. So when they're laced and tensioned properly, one side of the rim is taller than the other.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really minute details, but, we've been tubeless people from day one. We had a couple of little shiny objects along the way, but we only think about tubeless. We only do tubeless things at this point. So
Mhm.
honing in on those details wasn't by accident. We're measuring and evaluating competitive product. We've spent stupid amounts of money sending wheels through CT scans
Mhm.
with and without tires inflated, and getting an idea of what happens when a tire inflates, what kind of compression the wheel sees, what sort of things happen with the bead and the geometry of the rim.
Mhm.
So we really dialed in those details, and I think anybody that's been on those wheels can tell you that it works the way it's supposed to. And yeah, just all a quest for better product and better ride.
Yeah, I had a set of the Barons, and I would say when I first started riding them that it felt like they were like too compliant to me. But I also was just getting on a 29er, so
Okay.
I think some of it might have actually just been the actual 29er like flex itself.
Sure.
Because after I had ridden the wheels for, let's just say, a month, I didn't notice it anymore. You know what I mean? So it was kind of, I think it was just me personally. But I remember at first thinking like, oh, I don't know if I like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they're a low section height. There's definitely some adjustment there, and the feel is different. But like you say, changing wheel diameter at the same time,
Yeah.
hard to separate those two. But
yeah, I really think that's what it was, because there was all kinds of stuff that for me, I've been a long time 27.5 guy. So to like getting used to the 29er, I mean, even the first couple of weeks, I couldn't even hit jumps right. Like it just felt like my timing was always off, and it was really weird, like, so there was a lot of things going on in my mind. So I wasn't like out just like screaming at the top, these wheels, or, what I mean? I was like, I need to like figure this all out first. And then, but like I said, later on down the road, I really couldn't tell. So was there a specific reason that you guys decided to partner with Ibis on that? Or it was just like,
yeah, I mean, I've known some of the guys at Ibis for quite a while. They were early to the wider rims. They were doing 35s before a lot of other people, and it definitely has some merit. We don't go crazy wide with a lot of our stuff. We do some 35s, but we're happier in that 25 to 30 range, depending on the application, because we're looking at how tires shape and fit and so on. But they were early to that. They were doing a lot of carbon product, obviously. I mean, I still ride an Ibis bike on a regular basis, and they liked what we did with tubeless, and they knew that their tubeless application could be a little bit better. We liked what they did with rims, so no reason to compete against one another when we're friends anyway. Let's figure out a way to make this work and put some good stuff out there.
So does the Ibis wheel have a similar like internal shape to it as the Stans one?
They're identical. They come out of the same molds. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we worked with them back and forth in their engineering team on getting that geometry the way everybody was happy. There's basically the same product.
Yeah. Right on. Well, that's cool. That's good to know.
Yeah.
I actually have a set of the Ibis wheels on my lady's bike. So
yeah, if it has the S moniker, they'll call them 35Ss and so on. That means it has our BST, which is our rim design patents, incorporated, and it'll say little stands there somewhere on the decal.
Right on.
But those are the ones we've done with them.
So you guys have a handful of acronyms for your products that you guys have come out with. Off the top of your head, what do you got going on with those?
So ZTR was we didn't know what to call. Back to this naming nonsense, right?
Right.
We didn't know what to call the first rims we had done, so we did like a little contest with our customers and said, well, who's got an idea? And somebody threw out ZTR as 02 rim, and we went with it, and they got a free set of wheels or whatever it was at the time. So that stuck with us for a long time.
Looks like you have a BST and BST asymmetric.
Yeah, so BST was kind of the next one to come along, and that was our what we call bead socket technology, and it was just a way to define that patented shape that we had around the sidewall and bead seat area.
Got it.
The tire bead like a socket. And then we've done variants off that now. So there's a BST-R, which is our kind of road application. There are things we tweak about the road application from the mountain application. BST-A means it's the asymmetric version. So things like that, just variations on a theme.
When was it that you guys decided to start doing hubs as well?
Let's see, when was that?
Did it like basically come like right at the same time you were doing the rims, or was it a while later? Or
we were doing rims, and we were doing a fair amount of custom builds on those rims. So I mean, if we go back to the beginning of building wheels, the problem was we just wanted to sell rims originally, and then inevitably someone calls and says, well, my local shop doesn't build wheels, or I don't know where to get this wheel built. Can you build my wheel for me? So, okay, I guess we build wheels now. And we had people around with wheel building experience, so we weren't totally green to it.
You're like, who can build a wheel in here?
Let's lace this thing up. Kind of started down that path. At the time, boy, early days, we used a lot of American Classic hubs, back to the whole weight weaning thing. They were some of the lightest things going at the time. We used a little bit of WTB hubs then, some DTs, some Chris Kings, etc., just for various price points and what people were asking for at the time. Yeah. And then did that for quite a while. And at some point, I think American Classic was doing more and more wheel business. I think they wanted to do more with their hubs and their wheels and so on. And I think WTB got out of the hub game, and we used some DT Swiss for a while, but their flange geometry is a little unique and was getting basically some difficulties around building super light rims, which was kind of our thing. So we ended up looking for someone in Asia that could do a hub that would work for us and give us that flange geometry we wanted to provide more stability for the wheel, equalize the tension.
So when you're talking about the flange geometry, like for people that aren't super familiar with the wheel, like just how big the area is that the spokes connect to, I guess is
right. So you've got your cassette mounted on your drive side of the rear wheel, let's say, and your brake mounted on the non-drive side. So you've got two constraints. Your dropouts are only so wide. I've got wider through the ears, obviously. You only have so much room to work with in there. And the flanges where the spokes connect on either side. And depending on where you place those flanges, of course, you can't go out too far because then you'll hit your rotors or your cassette. Where you place those flanges and the diameter of the flanges and things of that nature dictate a lot of how the spoke tension, the end result of the spoke tension is. So if you place them in such a way that you have a big difference in tension left to right, you're accounting for the dish of the wheel and so on to fit your components, that can lead to a wheel that's not as durable long-term or not as stable in certain situations. So we're looking at geometry there to maximize the life of the wheel and so on. When you had a rim, so in those days, we're talking 26-inch stuff, it might have been, competitor rims might have been 490, 500 grams. We came along with a 355 gram model. You can't build those the same way that you build a 450 plus gram rim. So that tension balance became more critical, and started to learn a lot about how that geometry affects the build and the longevity and so on. And ultimately the feel of the wheel.
So with the asymmetric ones, is the tension closer to the same on both the spokes?
Right. So we've especially on our Mark IV aluminum models, really positioned that offset in the asymmetric to be as close as we can get to equal spoke tension left and right.
Interesting.
Which just makes the wheel last a lot longer.
Ultimately, that's what really it comes down to, is how long the wheel lasts.
Right.
Interesting. Huh. Learn a little something.
There's a lot of little nuances and details in there, of course, but
yeah,
you can angle your flanges, you can move them left and right a little bit, you can try and maximize triangulation, but when you do that, because you're constrained by the cassette, then you can see these big tension imbalances. Even in some cases with an asymmetric rim, you just can't bring that back enough. You can't offset it far enough to make it fit everything else it needs to. And doing asymmetric rims, like I said, the bead seat balance comes into play. So we're thinking about the tubeless aspect. We're thinking about how you lace it and where those spokes will fall. How wide is the channel as a result? So you can still mount tires from either side of the rim. Is the bead seat wide enough? Like you could really cheat it way to the one side, but then your bead seat gets very narrow and it's not going to work very well tubeless. but you
Mhm.
could maybe get better tension balance. What's better?
Mhm.
Well, we need tires to stay on and perform well tubeless. We maybe have to cheat back a millimeter or something.
Mhm.
It's a lot of things to balance in that equation ultimately.
Yeah,
But
yeah. It's definitely a lot more going on there than I would ever imagine. You know, like I'm definitely not one of those guys that really like super digs into technology. I just kind of like take it for granted. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, there's things I'm like, I flipped the light switch on, well, it works, but I don't really
Yeah.
think about how they got that electric to my
Right.
house.
Right. Right.
Take that for
Right.
granted too.
Got a bunch of kites up on the hill with keys on it, right? Just catching
Keys
electricity.
on wheels, whatever the case.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've got a
Totally.
few certified wheel geeks around here that think about all
Yeah.
these things and obsess over those details. So
Do
ultimately,
you? So what would like then? I always hear a difference in like how the wheel's laced as well. Like what pattern? How does that play into it?
yeah, I mean, there's a lot to consider there. But we could go a few hours on lacing patterns and spoke gauges and things of
Uh-huh.
that nature. But all of those things are important considerations in the wheel itself.
Uh-huh.
So that's why, like a system wheel, what people have come to know as a system wheel, where it's kind of one size fits all. This is the spoke you're going to get. This is the nipple we're going to use, and it's always
Yeah.
on this rim and hub. It works for most people, but
Right.
like any of us that start geeking out on this stuff a little bit, like, oh, but I want this and that, and I'm looking for this kind of feel. Then you go down that rabbit hole with a custom wheel builder that really knows their stuff, and they're going to
Mm-hmm.
talk to you about trailing spokes and leading spokes and lacing them certain directions and a different spoke gauge on the drive side versus the non-drive side, and
Oh
you
wow.
can go crazy.
Is
That's
that
all.
dictated by the rim or is that dictated by the hub or it's just by the builder?
Yeah, really. When we do custom build,
Uh-huh.
availability of parts has been difficult for the last 2 years, obviously, but we do a lot of custom builds, and those questions are usually, where do you ride? How much do you ride? What's your bike setup? What's your weight geared up? What's your, style? Some people are bigger guys, but they're not mashers. They can be pretty
Yeah.
smooth and easy. Um, yeah, terrain, history of other wheels. Which wheels have you ridden that worked well? Which ones haven't? What size
Yeah.
tires do you like to run? Et cetera, et cetera. Again, it's listed 20 or
Yeah.
30 things you can go down. Do you want to use them just for racing? Is it for training? Is it you need to be your all-around wheel set, or are you going to swap them when you want to run a different tire? It's just
Right.
a million things you can cover that really hone in on getting the right set of wheels for the right person.
Mm-hmm.
So custom builders, your local bike shop that knows your terrain, maybe knows you as a customer from the last 5 bikes they've sold you. I mean, that's a great resource to start with.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
It's kind of like
You
getting
were
tire knowledge. You can read online, hey, this tire is great, but if you live in sandy conditions and I live in loamy
yeah.
conditions, no, it's kind of a different animal.
Tires is one of those things where I always feel like when you ask somebody what their advice is, it really has like little actual like 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 it really doesn't mean much to you until you go try the tire
Right.
because like because everybody's opinion is so different. Like I could swear up and down to somebody that rides in the same area as me that I don't know, like an aggressor assegai setup is just like the best thing ever.
Mhm.
And I could have the guy that's riding the same trails like, oh, I hate that tire. It's just awful.
Right, right.
It's like,
It is. It's super personal. The tire
yeah,
pressure comes into the equation and everything else. How much you want to spend on them? Tires are so expensive now, but uh,
yeah,
yeah, I think there's some general things that work. Like in our area, it's really rocky. It's older embedded rock,
yeah,
pretty technical in spots, that sort of thing. Run what you want because you just need to get the right pressure and don't go out without a reinforced sidewall of some kind.
yeah,
Nexo, a snakeskin, whatever the latest, greatest name is for a sidewall protection.
yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, other than that, pick what you want.
Right, right. Yeah, there's some similarities, I think, here, like depending on what area you ride. And if the area that I ride a lot, if you're not riding something that's reinforced, you're definitely going to be just slicing sidewalls and doing some walking. So,
Yeah.
do you guys ever like, are you considering the type of tire that's being put on the rim when you're like considering your manufacturing or?
So we measure a lot of tires. We have
Mhm.
a fixture that we We basically install the tire as it would fit on a rim. We apply pressure, outward force on the tire beads. We measure them at certain forces. We've correlated those forces to tire pressures, back to using CT scans and so on to understand that. And we don't necessarily think about a specific tire, but we do think about the range within a given application. So use the flow example, like, well, okay, these are the 5 or 6 manufacturers and model types likely to be used on a flow. We know that they run from this size to that size in general across a range of production dates and compounds and all the other variables that come into tires. This is where we think this rim needs to be sized to work with that application. It's like, use the flow example. Somebody could put a DH casing on there. Somebody could put just, an exo type lighter sidewall casing on there. That the bead on the Schwalbe is different than the bead on the Continental and different than the bead on the Maxxis, etc. And that
so there's no kind of standard on the bead then that you guys are able to work with.
Ooh, that's a sore subject. No, there is not.
How is that determined then? It's just like whatever their tire manufacturer is like, yeah, this is a good bead.
Yeah, I mean, they all have their own internal testing and standards they want to meet. They all test them in different ways. Some are doing just air pressure blow-offs. Some are doing water tank blow-offs. Some are doing various other things. Some are measuring tires on inflating tires on a solid billet or steel rim fixture rather than on a real wheel, and that's different. So all those things come into play. I say internal standards for them are going to dictate more than anything at a like a global standards level. Been debated in different ways and so on, whether that would be a good thing, but where we stand today, it's not the case.
Gotcha. So do you guys see some future land where Stans is making tires? You think that's a possibility? Or
well, we did tires once.
Yeah.
So
did it go well?
It went well for our purposes, and we'll take a little bit of credit, I guess, since I'm here and nobody's going to tell me no at the moment. But early days for us with tires, I mean, this is again 2003, 4, 5 time frame, maybe 6. We had talked to some tire manufacturers. Oftentimes they would send us tires and say, "Can you make this tubeless?" They were all racing to get tubeless things to the market. Like, yeah, let's see what it takes. And same thing with rim manufacturers at the time before we were making rims. Hey, what do we need to do to make this rim tubeless? We'd get them feedback, probably for free at times, which was maybe not a good idea. But yeah, I mean, those early tires, one was called the Crow, one was called the Raven. We worked with Kenda to do those. So we had approached a few manufacturers and said, "Would you like to do a tire with us? We have some ideas. We know what works better as far as sealing, mounting, inflating, etc." We were told no everywhere we went with that idea. But Kenda listened a little bit and said, we won't do a tire that says Kenda on it, but we'll do a tire for you guys. So we went down that path. The tire is effectively a modified Karma, which was a fairly popular XC tire of the day. And we did a few little tricks in the sidewall and how it was molded and so on that made it set up and seal easier. Those tires were effectively early tubeless ready. I think Bontrager was maybe starting to dabble with their tubeless ready in the same time frame. I can't remember all the details now, but some of the tire manufacturers we went to with this idea said, "You know what, just go ahead and get out of here now. We're all UST. We're all full tubeless. We'll never do anything tubeless ready like what you're talking about." So for us, tubeless ready was standard type casings, modified bead area, sealant inside. And we're just flatly told, no, that's a horrible idea. So it's nice to look back now 15 years later and say, guess it wasn't such a bad idea.
Right.
I know basically is tubeless ready, and we all put some kind of sealant in there.
Yeah. I totally forgot about that UST when that first came out. That was Mavic, right?
Yeah. They had the first wheel sets, and they worked with Hutchinson on the tires.
Then tubeless ready. What was the difference between UST and tubeless ready?
I mean, that's still confused to this day. I mean, that's a legit question we get all the time. And there is some nomenclature at the global standards level that will be coming around that helps to try and clarify that. But effectively, I'm not trying to remember it verbatim, Tubeless tires don't require sealant. They hold air on their own. Tubeless ready tires do require sealant, and then your tube type tires, of course.
Got it. Okay. Huh. I didn't. I remember whenever that stuff first came out, and I was like, I don't know, man. I'm just buying this one over here.
Yeah, and then there isn't one. Bontrager did the TLR, the tubeless ready, which was the early name that stuck, and then Specialized had a version, the tubeless, and then Schwalbe has a version. Everybody has a version, but at the end, tubeless ready is just intended to mean put some sealant in there.
Right. So there were some people though that were willing to run with no sealant, huh?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Save a little weight, I guess.
Well, the tires weighed like 150 grams, 200 grams more. They had an additional liner, a butyl tire liner inside the tire casing for air retention. And it didn't work that well, and it was heavier, and then it made your tire ride a bit stiffer and less compliant.
Oh, that sounds great.
So,
right. So what's new over there right now? You guys came out with that dart tool not too long ago.
Yeah. So darts were a couple years ago now. I mean, we're always working on new things. Newer things are in the rim line, but the dart was actually brought one along here. I brought props. I had to have some props. I've got my dart tool, but this was a project that I was sort of. I'm not a chemist. I'm not going to pretend to ever be a chemist, but I was playing around with the idea of a solution that would work with the sealant to cause it to clot a little bit quicker in punctures. Mm-hmm. And about the same time I was playing around with that, I was contacted by an inventor in Australia who said, hey, I've been working on this idea. It's this additive you put in the sealant and it clots a lot quicker. And I said, how far along are you with that? Well, I've got provisional patents. I'm like, okay, I'm done. Talk. And he's a brilliant guy. He's a PhD organic chemist. Doesn't work in the bike world necessarily, but likes bikes. And we chatted a bunch and came around to what we now know as the dart, which is effectively taking his idea from the chemistry side. We impregnate it into a fabric. And it's that little guy there. So that's the feather or dart itself. You can see that thing. Well, I don't know which camera direction, but it's just this little feather shaped thing. And that fabric's impregnated with the chemical. So when you have a puncture that's too large for sealant, you still have fresh sealant inside. You just place this into the puncture site, jam it through the casing, pull it off, and the feathers will stay inside. And then we call it the DART. Again, acronyms, right? Dual action repair for tubeless.
Oh, there you go. I didn't realize that was an acronym.
Oh, it is. It is.
I was fine with it just being a dart.
It's not just a look of the thing, So the dual action is that there's a mechanical plug action happening, just like the sticky ropes of the world. Yeah. But there's the second mechanism, which is the chemical reaction, which is causing it to clot on contact with the sealant. So, optimized for our sealant, of course. It may or may not work with others, but optimized for ours. And dart tools have one on either end. We sell little refill packs, but for me, I carry a dart in one of our 2-ounce bottles all the time and feel pretty secure in the fact that you'll be able to fix any puncture out on the trail. I had one puncture during testing, manufacturer puncture. I sliced a tire with a knife, put 5 darts side by side in the puncture site and rode the tire for months.
Oh, wow.
Once they're in there and the sealant's made contact, it basically glues them into place. They're airtight. They're not going to pull out. The little feathers, when they contact the ground and so on, will wear off over time. But that's the exterior part of the casing, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
We don't call it a permanent repair. It's enough to get you out and get you back and fixed up, but they do work and they do hold and last.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't used those before, but I've definitely had the bacon strips in my tires for a long amount of time. And they're not supposed to be permanent, but you bought
$90, right?
Right, exactly. Well, and since then, I saw somebody, I don't remember who it was, on YouTube or something like that you could put like a tire patch on the inside of your tire.
Yep.
And ever since I learned that, that's been my go-to, especially with, like you said, I mean, with the way that tires are, the availability is still not good yet. I mean, I can definitely walk into a shop and at least maybe find the tire that I want. Maybe not the compound or the
Right.
sidewall or something like that. But it seems like whenever you get a good one, that's when you get that big hole in your tire. Like 3 rides in, you're like, this is new. I'm not throwing
Yeah.
this away, you know?
Right.
So, but that like put the patch on the inside thing. That works pretty good. I've been like,
Yeah. I mean,
that.
if you go on the old Wayback Machine website and look at our site from 15 years ago, you'll find this with patching instructions.
Oh yeah.
It was on there. Yeah, how to patch a tire. You clean the casing really well. You don't want any dried sealant or anything there. Apply the patch, and we clamp them into place and do the whole thing. Yeah, I've seen people stitch big slices together and patch them simultaneously. That seemed to work for them.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I heard people stitching. I just don't know how much of that I would trust, but I've definitely gotten tried some few things out on the side of the trail now and then. Whenever you're like, okay, we're gonna put a tube in, an empty pack of goo, some leaves, and
yep,
whatever it takes to get home, right? So
absolutely.
So you had mentioned something a minute ago that I think is one of those things that you hear a lot. Is there anything actually that can go wrong or bad if you have 2 different kinds of sealant in your tires? Like say I'm using a different brand and then I mix it with yours or something like that.
I mean, I think there are some out there that use a similar base to us with the natural latex.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to tell you to go mix them. It may or may not work. It's not going to be optimal by any stretch of the imagination. If you had a little residue left, you're like, oh, you need to fix it. And your buddy's like, oh, I have this. You put it in. You're probably not going to hurt anything,
right?
To a good extent. But there are also a number of sealants on the market now, and outside the U.S. there are way more that use a lot of different chemistries, and you wouldn't want to mix those together at all. You can end up with some sort of coagulated mess in there.
So it could be ugly on the inside.
Yeah. I'm not going to go as far as to say you're going to cause like the tire to melt or anything.
Yeah.
It's probably not going to be a good situation. It's probably not going to be very effective against that next puncture, etc.
So would the best thing to do like take the tire off, like rinse it out, water?
Yep. If you were to switch, from one brand to another, you definitely want to clean the tire as best you could. I mean, like peeling out every little piece isn't likely to be necessary, but clean it as well as you can and apply the new.
Mm-hmm. With that latex as the base, I've got it in my clothes whenever I'm like changing a tire on the side of the trail or something like that. Is there any secret Stan's way to like wash that stuff out? Or
I wish I could tell you yes. We've all written some article of clothing with it at some point.
The
best thing to do is as soon as it gets on the clothing or your work apron, whatever the case may be, is to rinse it with cold water. That's your best bet. But once it dries and it's kind of impregnated in the fibers and so on, it's really difficult to get out.
Yeah. I bought a bunch of.
There are some chemicals that could break down that latex, but they're also going to ruin your clothes.
Yeah, I tried that. I went out just out of like curiosity. You know what I mean? I had a pair of shorts that just got demolished because I had a cush core in and I like sliced the sidewall and I had to take it out. And I was like wearing the cush core, around my chest or whatever. Right. And I just got sealant everywhere. And I didn't know that was a problem until I washed them and dried them. Right. Of course.
Oh yeah.
And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to go to Home Depot and I'm going to buy like all kinds of stuff that's probably horrible to put on these things and just see if I can get it out. And let's just say none of them were 100% effective. So
yep, I can believe that.
Yeah. So it was definitely interesting along the way. So what else you got going on over there? You got what's the React radial impact?
I forgot about some of these. Chris
I'm just
Curry,
pulling up on your About Us page or whatever.
Yeah, Chris Curry, our creative director that left a few months ago, he was great at creating those technologies and so on.
There you go.
His specialty. So React was I think it was radial impact.
Yeah, it says radial impact absorbing carbon tech.
You should quiz me. I should know this stuff. Right? Yeah. Radial impact absorbing carbon technology. So that was the whole compliance thing, right?
Uh-huh.
So we've done hundreds of drop tests on rims and things at different pressures and spoke tensions and tire constructions and all these things people tout. But I mean, there's an old video on our YouTube channel, I think somewhere, of us doing some of these impact tests and showing aluminum versus carbon and how much the carbon would actually deform under load before it failed and that sort of thing. So that was it. We felt like we hit on a really good geometry and really good carbon layout that could withstand those impacts. And we applied that methodology to all of our models at this point.
Do you think that the back to tires again? I don't know. I'm gonna go bounce all over the place because that's what I do, I guess. Do you think that the wide tire, whenever you'll see that by like Maxxis, is that actually? Do you think that's really beneficial, or you think it's just kind of a marketing thing?
Well, they did alter the geometry of those tires a little bit. The very early ones, I won't say that they didn't change much, but they measured differently.
Yeah.
So it depended. Early ones they said were for 35 millimeter rims. Nothing against Maxxis personally. I've got them on my own bike. They said they were for 35s, but if you mounted them on 30s, they actually looked a lot better. Had like a more natural tire shape. You could see that, okay, this is the center knobs, or if you lean the bike, it's going to actually have a transition knob and then not a super sharp defined edge, but it's going to have the ability to put the tire on edge. Where if you stretched that tire onto a 35, it kind of flattened the crown of the tire a little bit and maybe this very squared edge, which maybe for certain styles and certain conditions would work, but in general, it was iffy. Like we thought, if I remember right, this is when we're working on Mark III generation rims. We thought that some of those looked better on a 28 millimeter width than they did on a 30 or 35. It was, and some of that's subjective. We're looking at it saying this is what we think the right tire shape is. Of course, I had a different opinion, but you can put them on different rims and get different characteristics. That's kind of the end of the story. Is don't go by everything that's on the package. Try it on the width rim you like using.
What works for you.
Conditions you ride in, and how much do you lean the bike, and how much do you pedal in a straight line, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So, but you said overall, you guys really prefer to be in that 30 millimeter range for your rims that you're building?
For a lot of tires. So we have something called wide right, which is looking at the width of the rim versus the width of the tire. And there are some standardizations around how tires should be measured going forward, hopefully. But the idea being we're trying to get that proper shape, as we would call it, on a given rim width. So we'll look at that and say tires from this size to that size are appropriate for a 25. For this size to that size, generally appropriate for a 28 or a 30, etc. Just again, opinion and how we think they should ride and handle, and what the shape should be, and so on and so forth.
Is there a pressure that you guys think is best for your kind of like, what's the sweet spot?
No. Everybody's different. Again, riding conditions, tire construction, style, etc., all factor into it. There have been a few apps come along recently. I think SRAM has a calculator and Silk has a calculator, and all those might be able to get you close. We used to have just a really basic formula years ago when there weren't 29ers and 2.8 tires and all those things out there that would get you close. But everything's just a starting point. The best thing you can do when you switch wheels, tires, get a new bike, have a small loop you like to do with the kind of conditions you ride in most often. Maybe start with that pressure that one of those calculators recommends, but take a lap, drop the pressure 1 or 2 psi at a time. If it starts to feel too, squirmy, then maybe you come back up and go the other direction. You say, I'm bouncing around, or I don't like the vibration through the handlebar or whatever, then dial it back down. But that's the best thing to do, is to experiment 1 or 2 psi at a time. A lot of people end up with a differential a little bit lower on the front than the rear, but that's not everyone.
Yeah, I remember when I first went that first set of Stan's wheels that I was talking about and went tubeless. And I mean, before I was probably 50 psi in a tube, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I remember buying those rims, and it was like maximum pressure 40, and I was like 40, oh my god. And I it took me a while to like even trust that I could get down to like 30 and not just like
Right.
rip the wheel off or something like that. Nowadays you see some guys that are running like low 20s and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, at the elite racing levels, people will do crazy low things at times, but it comes back to finding that happy place where it doesn't squirm but it holds an edge, and
Yeah.
what's more comfortable, what's faster on these conditions, and just playing around a little bit. But yeah, we've been kind of the low pressure people for a long time, really beating that drum, road and mountain, and that 40 psi rating was where we were comfortable with tire blow-offs because of the variability of tires and so on and so forth. If you went above that pressure, you're taking it into your own hands, but we know below that we're in good shape. And frankly, you should probably try riding down here. It's really fun.
Yeah. Well, apparently that Ibis wheel will hold 80 pounds of pressure in it for a while, because the other day my lady was I usually pump her tires up for her, and she was going for a ride, and she was like, oh, I need to pump this up. So she put 80 in her mountain bike because she knew 80 is what I put in our road bikes.
Wow.
And it didn't last all the way to the trail. She was like halfway there. It's just like boom, flew off in the back of the car. But I thought it was entertaining, so I figured
definitely pushing the limits there.
Yeah, it definitely was. I think she learned a valuable lesson that day. But yeah.
The actual standard on the safety factor blow off is quite low. Tire manufacturers all go well beyond that in most cases, and we do as well. But there's a reason not to exceed it. A, it's not that well, and B, it's just you're asking for trouble in some cases.
Actually, I remember she said she put 60 because that's what it said on the side of the tire, and I was like,
that's the other
why,
thing.
Why did they even put that there?
We hear that all the time, and you're not going to convince people to mark lower pressures on tires for whatever reason. It has come down. There are a number of them that have come down quite a bit.
Like, why would Maxxis have 60 psi on a DHF? Like,
yeah, you're gonna have to have them on the show and ask them that one.
You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't understand that. Like, why would you put that there? You know?
Yeah. And the number of people that we encounter, especially, more recreational riders and so on, that, maybe it's Sea Otter or something like that. They want to come out and have a good time. They don't, ride their bike a dozen times a year, etc. It's great fun for everyone.
Right.
They'll come along and say, well, I just run whatever it says on the tire. And like, that's the maximum. That's not what you should necessarily use.
Yeah.
Let's dial it down. So our approach has always been, look at the rim, look at the tire, and you need to use the lower of the two as your max, of course. So that's becoming kind of standardized globally as well. Everybody's agreed that that's the best approach.
Yeah, totally. As you can see in the background here, I got the Cushcore box back there. How does that affect your system? How do you guys feel about that when those type of systems came out?
I mean, they're interesting for sure. There's a number of them on the market. I think.
There's a bunch of them now. I mean, whenever I think Cushcore first came out, they were kind of like you guys a little bit.
Yeah, Cushcore is very early to that game, and those guys know Adam a little bit, and we send them some sealant from time to time. I know they buy sealant as well, so I have nothing bad to say about any of those guys. They came from a moto background, and there's some similar technology used in certain off-road motorcycle applications.
Yeah.
A bit different, full moose, but.
But as far as like how your product works, you don't really have any. It doesn't mess with it, or
we've done some testing with it and so on, and see some interesting things. But one of the early ones we sponsored, both of us, both companies sponsored the GT team years ago. I can't recall if Cushcore is still a GT or not. We still work with them, and we were at one of the enduro EWS races, and there were some issues around cuts at the top of the rim and the kind of the pinch flat zone there. And what we were having trouble with was getting, even with Cushcore installed, it would still pinch in that tire casing, you couldn't get the sealant down around the cush core because it's pressed out tight against the sidewalls. And getting the sealant down in there to even try and help on a pinch flat, which isn't easy either way, was difficult. But beyond that, it doesn't really cause us any problems.
Any of the other ones? I've seen some of the other brand stuff that looks even more, how would I say, like Cushcore is kind of almost like a latex kind of rubbery feeling to it, but there's some of them out like the company that's red. I can't think of the name right now. It starts with a
tennis.
Yeah, theirs seem like way more foamy. Like I would be concerned that maybe it would absorb some of the sealant.
Yeah, I don't know the specific foams they're all using.
Yeah.
Cushcore is more like what I call like a sneaker foam.
Yeah, that makes
sense.
I see what you're saying.
And there were some, they weren't real open cells, but Huck Norris, if you remember that one, you don't see those around too much as much now, but those had a tendency to really collect a lot of sealant in them, really kind of sop it up.
Gotcha.
Those sorts of things were more problematic for sealant than the Tannis or the Cush Core, and there's a few others along those lines. The Vittoria, are just kind of closed cell foams that don't absorb and don't really cause any problems. In general, I think those inserts they're nice in the fact that they're modular. You like them, you need one on the rear, go ahead. I don't use them, have tried them, but I'm fine too. If I needed to put one in to go play at the bike park for a day, I could do that.
Yeah, totally.
It's nice to have that approach, I think, for people.
Yeah. I'm like 250 pounds, so I feel like for a guy my size, it makes a big difference in the cornering. But I'm sure there's some other 250-pound guys that argue it the other way. So
yeah,
for me, it seemed like a huge difference in the cornering, and I don't really use it for, like, let's just say rim protection. It's definitely like when I talk to the Cushcore guys, they definitely sold me on the science. You know what I mean? Like, so
there's definitely presses out more on the sidewalls than some of the other versions on the market, and it's a pretty tight fitting hoop. Obviously, you've installed them. You know what that's all about.
Yeah, right.
Which has some of its own characteristics that imparts in the wheel itself. So it's a good approach.
Definitely makes putting wheels on a little more interesting. And I have a set of the NV 735s, so they have like a rim strip on them as well.
Right.
So you add that rim strip and Cushcore on a wheel, and you just want to punch baby Jesus.
Yeah, that's a tight fit.
Yeah, it's definitely it's one of those things where sometimes I question whether I want to do it again. But once they're on, right? So then there's that. So when you guys were designing your wheels, you didn't have any concerns with any of those different inserts, like making any issues with the wheels? I heard some manufacturers like initially were like saying, oh, well, that rim cracked this way because of the insert or something like that.
We have seen some of that in testing.
And
it's not Cushcore necessarily or one of the other brands, but different ones, the way they fit, the way they interact with the tire and the rim, the type of impact, you could see different failure modes. It's not to say that it caused anything or prevented something from happening. But you can see different characteristics. You've added another element to the system effectively. And it could behave in a different way than you're used to.
Interesting. So do you guys have anything on the horizon that you're kind of working towards? Or
I hate to say it's on the horizon, but we launched our Mark IV, our 4th generation aluminum rims, effectively last August, along with our S2. So the Mark IV is like our premium alloy welded product, and our S2 is our premium or performance alloy. So that's our sleeved product. Those, they came along in August officially. We kind of relaunched them again recently because we finally had enough of them to start going around. We've been in such a supply deficit for so long that sure, they were officially available, but they weren't really available. They were starting to show up on OEM bikes. Working with the Transition and Cannondale and GT, and Niner and those types, and they would start showing up on those bikes. And I think the Zari was actually the first one with the S models, the new S2 models on bikes. So we were able to start, filling that OEM demand, but we didn't have anything for aftermarket. So we've effectively relaunched those recently with all.
So the Mark is, you can still get that in an arch and a flow. It seems like it's just that.
Yeah, it's available in crest, arch, and flow. So 25, 28, and 30 millimeters wide, respectively. And that's what brings in the asymmetric. That's the big change with the Mark IV generation. Replacing all the Mark IIIs. And then with those, for the complete wheels, we did an all-new hub project. So we worked with Jake at Project 321. He had a unique design around the free hub mechanism using magnets instead of springs under the palms. And we went about designing a shell and working on the preload mechanism and the axle and so on to put all new hubs into the Mark IV wheels, which we're super happy with that hub and its preload adjustment. And I mean, priorities there were on engagement speed and free rolling, less drag in the whole system. And that preload mechanism is really what makes it work. It's kind of the magic. I mean, the magnets maybe are more magical, but the preload mechanism. So we were evaluating that, like going back into the details. A lot of hubs on the market, Project 321 has it, but a lot of them don't have a preload adjustment. Our previous hubs didn't have a preload adjustment. And what we found with clamping force of rear axles, depending on there's so many different rear axles. They look the same basically, but different thread pitches, different lengths, obviously, different mechanisms to tighten them, whether it's a QR looking lever or a cam closure or just a hex. We found the clamping force to vary, I don't remember the exact numbers, but 2 to 3x across the different styles. So, I mean, that's just different loads you're applying to the hub, and every piece in that hub across the axle, its bearing bores, the shoulders on the axles, the end caps, all have a tolerance, and those tolerances stack up. And without that preload mechanism, you can't dial in that bearing. And the difference is night and day. If you have a hub with a preload mechanism that's done right, it rolls and spins so smooth. And the durability has been off the charts for us with this model. And some of our testers that could kill a hub in 3 rides previously have been on them for over a year now without issues. Hans Ray has been a longtime sponsored athlete who loves to do trials on his e-bike these days. And, he can put a hurting on a hub, and they're rolling great for him. So super happy with that. And they're finally available at some level. Not a lot of them, but they're out there.
Yeah, I'm real familiar with Project 321. I've been running his wheels for that first set of wheels that I was talking about. Those were Project 321 hubs that I had in that
Nice.
set of, that way back when. So yeah, Jake's a good dude. I definitely like his hubs.
Known him a long time. He used to buy rims from us and strip the black anodize off of them, polish them, re-anodize it in colors, match them up to his hubs.
Sounds like a Jake thing to do.
Oh yeah, he was selling those for a while, and our product manager here, Drew Hanna, had worked with Jake when Drew was at Cannondale, because Jake was doing all the lefty hubs and so on, and all the lefty parts. And so we went back a long ways. So both of us, Drew and I, knew Jake for a long time. So when we wanted to do this new hub, and we had tested his hubs quite a bit, somewhat maybe without his knowledge, but we tested them a lot on our fixtures, riding, test riders, etc. He said, "Hey, how do you feel about doing a hub project together?" And kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit. We said, "No, with you guys, I'm in. Let's do it." And kind of went from there.
I like the magnets better than the springs, just because when you take that thing apart, you don't have to worry about those stupid springs just shooting all over the place.
I brought a hub, but I did not see my props. I'm like Gallagher over here with all his props smashing stuff. But I didn't bring one with just the free hub, but it's got it's marked on there, the 216 points of engagement. So it's nice and smooth, pretty quiet overall. We use the oil inside like Jake does, the magnets, like you said. So, and
then you guys are getting the shell made somewhere else.
So the shells are made in Taiwan, and a couple of the other what we call non-critical parts, but Project 321 is making all the critical parts.
Yeah.
For the drive mechanism and everything. And then we assemble those in our facility in New York.
Right on.
before they go into wheels.
Cool. Can people buy your hubs alone, or do they only come with your wheel sets?
No, our agreement with Jake is that we just do wheels. That's our thing. We've never really sold hubs separately. So for similar technology, you can get a Project 321 hub.
Yeah.
His shell is different and so on and so forth. He's incorporated. We're in the process of incorporating some of the features we worked on together.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if those are quite available yet, but yeah, he's always got something interesting going on over there.
Yeah, he does. Definitely. So, so basically you got that Mark IV that released again, and you're saying that's an aluminum only. What do you where do you guys fall on the aluminum versus carbon wheel kind of debate?
Honestly, I go back and forth on it.
I
mean, we've done carbon wheels again since 2014. Got a lot of experience. We've done some things I think work really, really well. The tooling's expensive. The recycling is kind of the big thing right now. Thermosets versus thermoplastics, and what's really recycling. That sort of thing. They can last longer in certain situations, and some people can kill them quickly. Aluminum, at the end of the day, is a really good rim material. I've going back years and years. I used to take sales calls, and I would say, you want carbon or do you want to buy 3 sets of aluminum? What's your intended use? What do you want to do with this? What's your budget? Let's work with that, because we can get an amazing set of aluminum wheels for a fraction of the price in some cases, and others are close to carbon pricing because of the direct from China or what have you. But the level of detail and engineering we put into it, aluminum can be a great wheel product.
Yeah. I think it depends on what you're looking for as well.
Yeah.
But do you see the failures like in the carbon wheels being as catastrophic as people like tend to think they are? Like, because that's the argument I always hear against like carbon wheels is like, oh, you're just gonna blow this thing up. And it's like, and I've broke a handful of carbon wheels already, and none of them have been like that, but I don't know if it's just my experience.
No, I mean, it could happen, sure, but you can also really destroy an aluminum wheel.
Right.
Typically, and we get to see a very, very low rate of failures come through, but when we see them, it's oftentimes just like a hairline crack that's formed. So you've hit something hard, but because of the way we do our layup and so on, like our goal is to, one, have that compliance, but two is if a rim does crack from an impact, we still want the tire to retain air. So we're able to tweak and work around that a little bit and create the rim that, 9 times out of 10, if you hit it, it will just crack through the outer portion. The tire channel will remain intact, retain air in the tire. You can ride out, maybe at a slower pace, but you can get out of the woods, and you're not going to have a catastrophic failure that causes you to be injured or something of that nature.
Yeah.
But like I said, people do some strange things sometimes. I mean, we've probably had just as many of them that have been melted by car exhaust as we have spokes pull through.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Sticking the spokes kind of situation. So
that car exhaust thing's a real thing, though, huh?
Oh, it's real. Yeah. I mean, we've seen car exhaust happen a handful of times. We've seen people try to dry a rim. I'm not going to name names. There are people out there that tried to dry a carbon rim next to the fire. That was bad. We had a racer one time at 24 Hours Old Pueblo decide that they were going to lean their wheel and tire up against one of the propane heaters. Also bad for carbon wheels.
Yeah, it doesn't work out very well.
Yeah, we've seen a few. We have seen a few.
I would imagine. What's your warranty process like over there for the wheel sets?
Yeah, I believe on carbon though, we do a 7-year, which is effectively, expected lifetime for us of a mountain bike wheel. So we don't call it lifetime, but I guess it's effectively lifetime. But we don't give people a hard time about anything, honestly.
Is it kind of like a no questions asked, or like some of the companies, or
if we're asking questions, it's because we're genuinely curious about what the heck happened, so that we can maybe head this off at the pass the next time. How can we use that information? I mean, when somebody calls with a warranty wheel, we're asking questions about what kind of cassette they run, what the bike setup is, all these kinds of things, because that information helps us make a better product the next time.
Mm-hmm. Do you guys ask for them back sometimes so that you can like examine them, or?
Sometimes, yeah. If it's a new type of failure, or they're saying, hey, I was literally, feel just riding along, and then we get it and it's filled with like dirt and there's massive scratches on it, then we have to say, well, maybe that wasn't just riding along.
Right.
But yeah, you can stand to learn a lot if it's a new type of failure.
Yeah.
If it's something we've seen before, maybe we don't need it back. We sell globally, so if that wheel is in Finland and it's $190 to ship it one way, we might just tell you to keep it. Field destroy it, put it in the bin so nobody else can get hurt. But
yeah. So do you have a crash replacement price, or is it just you'll swap it out?
We do a warranty on pretty much everything carbon, without question. We do offer crash replacement if you literally said, "Hey, I did this and I was stupid." We'll help you out. We want you to keep running our wheels, frankly. So, we're going to find a way to make it right. And sometimes somebody will call and say, "I literally backed over this with my car. And it's completely my fault. I just need a new wheel for my event." And we work with people.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting because like some companies are not that way at all, and and other ones are really trying to keep people happy and on their product. And it's interesting to me, like that there's still such a wide like gap between like what one company offers and another.
Yeah. I mean, I could tell you lifetime and then hassle you every time you call them, but what could we do? We say, well, this is expected lifetime of something, and we've increased that over the years as materials get better, manufacturing gets better, etc.
Yeah,
people have their expectations change about how long a wheel should last, that sort of thing. But
I had a buddy with a brand new bike and the wheel set from that bike company, and first run, like not even 3 minutes into it, going down this like enduro trail, and broke the rim, and they were 100% not working with him at all. It was like they gave him a crash replacement price of like $400 or $500, and it was just kind of one of those things where it was like you could look at the rim, it was pristine except for this like failure in it, and it's like, come on, man. I was really blown away that situation happened.
Yeah,
especially when they're go ahead.
I won't say it's everyone, but if there's a defect, a manufacturing defect in a carbon rim, we're not talking carbon steers or carbon forks here, but a manufacturing defect in a carbon rim, you're going to find it pretty quickly in use if it didn't get caught somehow in the QC process. And you won't find that minor manufacturing issue 4 years down the line.
Right.
It's going to show up. So.
And what kind of things would go wrong in QC that could lead to something like that?
You'd be surprised what can go wrong.
Yeah.
But we have people that monitor production for us in Taiwan that aren't involved with the production itself. They're independent, and it can be anything from voids to using material that was technically expired or was left out of the freezers for too long.
Oh wow!
Had issues with improper pressures during the curing stage, or post curing, they have to clean up edges, the kind of the flashing that appears as it's squeezing out from the molds, the epoxy. They could be too aggressive about removing that flashing and cause damage to the rim, things of that nature. So those are all things that are QC'd by the manufacturer before they are QC'd by our independent person, and then we QC them again in New York before they're assembled into wheels. So even with random lot inspections, you're seeing a lot of the rims out of a given batch up close. So.
Yeah, I mean, still some stuff will get through. It's like you can't catch everything.
Yeah, that's all comes down to having good processes in the first place.
I bought a set of handlebars over the weekend, and you can't put grips on. like the outside of the bar is right. If you measured that, it's probably dead on, but it slides on about 1.5 inches, and then you need a mallet to put them on any further than that, and that's not the way they're supposed to go.
Something doesn't sound right there. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So I mean, stuff happens. I mean, sometimes people get, they take their one experience as the experience of like the entire company, and it's like, come on, man. Like they really, that's their object, it's like
Right.
put out some crappy handlebars or whatever, rims or whatnot. It's like, give them a break, so
Yeah. I generally say nobody comes to work and wants to do a bad job on any given
right,
day. You
right,
might get some real wing nuts that could sabotage something, but nobody's trying to give you a hard time about your handlebar.
Yeah, right. Looking back over the years that you've worked there, is there any direction that maybe you guys went for a while that in hindsight you're like, man, I wish we wouldn't have done that?
I can't say there is really. I mean, we don't do any road product right now outside of sealant tape valves for road. Of course, you can use a dart on a road tire the same as you can a mountain tire. But we did our Alpha rim brake road rims. We did a disc version of that, both with what we call a 340 and a 400. Again, back to weight. That's about what they weighed at the time. And those were really good, but we didn't stay in that segment. And we did a carbon road wheel that was, I still ride them. They're phenomenal. But that was an instance where road tires weren't quite there yet. We've always struggled with road tubeless, kind of waiting for tire manufacturers to come along. And now, of course, there are tons of options. They're running them in the Tour today and so on and so forth. There's a lot of tubeless into the road world.
So they can ride them now? I knew that was, I don't follow road racing very, very tightly, but I knew for a while that it was one of those things.
Oh yeah. There's people that still hate the fact there are disc brakes and tubeless tires in the Pro Peloton, but they're there.
So the disc brakes are allowed now too.
Oh yeah.
I knew that was another one. They had to have the rim brakes for a long time, right?
Yeah. But road is probably an area that, as a brand that was originally mountain bike, it was hard to break into road, but we knew we had something to offer with a little bit lower pressures and some of our tubeless designs and so on. And maybe we'll revisit it someday, but it's tough to break in against a lot of brands in the road market have been around a long time.
We have gravel wheels though. I mean, that's pretty close, right?
Yeah, so gravel for us is a different game altogether. We've done a lot of gravel stuff. Our Grail carbons are phenomenal gravel wheel. We're using our Crest aluminum product now a lot in gravel, and people come up to we have some really good racers around that run them, and people say, "What, you didn't run carbon today?" Like, no, these aluminum wheels are great. It's the Crest at 25 millimeters wide, but we still do quite a few gravel products, and it's a really good space for us. A lot of people that are riding gravel now have crossed over from mountain bike. It's their second, third bike, what have you, maybe, but they knew tubeless from mountain. Gravel is just a natural extension. Like the day I don't want to get beat up on the trails, I just want to ride around with my friends or try a new event. Gravel is a great place for that. And those that were on the road and come to gravel realize that tubeless is the way to go pretty quickly if they hadn't tried it on the road yet. And it's a good place for us.
Yeah, I have to try that. I mean, I don't have on my gravel bike, I am actually riding slick tires right now, so it might as well just be a road bike, but I don't run it tubeless. And I've never done that, so I'd have tubeless wheels on there.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, just they're actually Stan's wheels actually.
There you go.
So that's funny. I just thought of that. So maybe one of these days I have to come around and get around to it.
Yeah, it's worth it for sure. The little bit lower pressures, the lack of punctures and so on. And you're familiar
with I think they did some kind of a thing too, like some kind of scientific study that they were saying that the lower pressures actually over time panned out to better times for people because there was like less fatigue on their body. So then the I don't know, that was the thing that I had read a while back. Like it was like they did something like where you're running 100 PSI, or I think some people were even running like 125 or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? But if you run like 80 or a little bit lower, that it doesn't beat your body up as much. So over time, you end up having better times. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think there's a number of studies out there, and the fatigue thing I think is real, as is the fact that a lower pressure tire can conform to irregular surfaces, where a higher pressure tire just bounces off of some of those things. And even the smoothest roads aren't that smooth if you get down and look at them real close.
Yeah, right.
So those rolling resistance studies that we're talking about for years were done on smooth steel drums and that sort of thing that didn't really mimic real conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And now that more of those studies have been done, yeah, for sure. We knew it was happening because we were seeing race times come down when we were working with athletes. And yeah, there are studies out there to back it up.
Yeah, yeah. So you guys have a stands team that you guys sponsor?
We sponsor a lot of different athletes across the range, from cross country to enduro, downhill, into the free ride, big mountain type of things. A lot of athletes that are doing like the Crankworks events. So they're doing, pump track and slalom and so on and so forth. So we've covered the range through the years. We've multiple Olympic medals through multiple world championships and so on and so forth. But yeah, we've just always kind of had some form of racing pretty deep in our blood. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, right on. Do you think that there's a good like correlation? Do you think people make correlation between like your product and that pro racer whenever they're sponsored by you, or?
I don't think there's necessarily a real strong correlation. Maybe in certain instances, a particular product shows up on a particularly influential rider or what have you, but it's not that strong. Part of it gives us the content aspects, things to talk about, products being used. A lot of those riders aren't really good at testing. Occasionally you'll come across some that aren't very good at providing feedback. They just aren't as in tune with certain things. They know what they like, but they can't tell you what they don't like about the new item or something of that nature.
Yeah.
So yeah, different types that way.
And then just brand recognition, I would imagine.
Yeah. And it's, being involved in the kind of the pointy end of any of those sports just helps develop products and be around other people that are into cutting edge technologies and things of that nature that we can eventually bring into everyday use. Some brilliant people are the mechanics in the pits and things like that. They're coming up with new little fixes and wouldn't it be great if we could do this or that? Yeah, let's go work on it. As much as the athletes themselves, it's oftentimes the mechanics that you get to know and work with, or engineers and product managers from other brands with suggestions and things of that nature all come out of those little communities that infest the race events.
Yeah. You think 26 is dead?
As far as retail sales, maybe it saw a bit of a resurgence the last 2 years. We do make a number of 26-inch products, so I wouldn't call it dead.
Yeah.
More of them are now found on kids' bikes than anything else. So we work with a few brands that do only kids' bikes. And yeah, we make the Crest as an example. In certain versions, we make it a 20, a 24, and a 26-inch version. So they're out there.
It makes sense for the kids' bikes to not go to 27.5 or something like that. Or I guess, probably. Yeah, that makes sense there. I know there's a lot of people obviously still in the DJ kind of zone that are running 26 as well.
Yeah. Well, we have a number of pump track and slalom athletes that probably not going to say it too loud, but they're a little upset we don't have certain models available in 26 inch. We can't justify another carbon mold just to make 6 rims a year.
Right.
It's not in our capabilities, but yeah, kids bikes. I mean, they're so good now. I couldn't imagine getting a kid's bike at that age. If I was closer to 40 years younger, and had a bike with Stan's wheels and mainstream suspension products and so on, be blown away. But that's what the little rippers are on.
It's pretty crazy the price of some of those bikes that like parents can pay for a bike that like the kid's going to grow out of pretty quickly too.
Yeah, you better have a couple siblings to pass it along.
I mean, even some of the ones that are not even full suspension, just like a front fork and other than that, a rigid bike, and they're still like $1,900.
Yep.
Because they have like disc brakes and a dropper and all this stuff, and you're like, whoa, that is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, appropriately sized crank arms and brake levers and all those kind of things make a difference for kids that are learning.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why I show up at a trailhead and get blown away by a 12-year-old because they grew up on really nice bikes, and I get to ride once a week.
Right. Do you think that the bike industry is done with the new wheel sizes, or do you think that you could see something else come out?
I would like to think so. We did some 32-inch prototypes a few years back for a guy, but I don't think that's going to stick at this point.
That's not going to stick.
I'm 6'3", so I like the 29er. I'm comfortable on it. I can see where people wanted the smaller options, whether it's 27 or still back to 26. But
yeah,
I'd have to be a lot taller to want 32s or something of that nature. I think I'm comfortable on 29s. If they came along and I ride them and I like it, great. But I'm not looking for it.
Have you ridden one of the mullet bikes yet?
Yeah. We've played around on different stuff here. I think.
What'd you think?
One of our engineers rides one on a pretty regular basis.
I'm 6'2". I'm really interested in that. I've had a bunch of Bronsons over the years, so since they put that new mullet out, I've been really considering it. And I got a buddy that his wife has one that he's ridden a bunch of times, and he went and bought some other mullet, and I don't know. It's got my interest. I need to get out there and try one and see if it's really.
Yeah, it's no harm in trying it, right? You can just swap a rear wheel for a day, and your bottom bracket might change whatever. You don't have the ability to adjust your geometry, but you can try it pretty easily.
Yeah. I think I'm gonna have to give it a shot here soon.
I think for our terrain, my riding style, and so on, I don't see me using it, but I'm not going to knock anybody else. Some of the teams we work with drive us crazy. We're like, oh, we're running 29s this year, and you ship them all their wheels, and they say, oh, well, we've decided to use the 29, 27 setup. We're going to need new rear wheels, and then drive us nuts. But
yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, I've been a 27.5 guy for a long time, so it'll be. I've been slowly tasting the Kool-Aid. I started with a 27.5 plus hardtail that I had for a while, and that kind of dipped me into the 29er, and I have a 29er tall boy now too. And I feel like the way that the bike's geometries are now, they have the 29er riding just as good. Where when I first tried them, it was like, this is just not the same,
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember when I got my first one. It was pretty early on, 2005 or 6.
Yeah,
I was on my first 29er. It was pretty early, but it was full suspension, and I got comfortable on it and never turned away. But.
Right on. That's good stuff, man. So anything that you don't think that we talked about that somebody that's considering stands, what makes you guys stand out compared to some of the competition?
Well, I think in rim and wheel, it comes back to the kind of that attention to detail. It's kind of generic phrase, but when we do a new rim or wheel, we really dig into that stuff and try to hone in on the things that make tubeless work as well as it possibly can, given the variety of tires and applications and so on. So I think that carries through a lot of our other products, sealant and tape and valves and things of that nature. Again, we've been at it forever, and we've seen a lot of things come and go, and tested a lot of those competitive products along the way. We still use a natural latex, which some people you would disagree with and think synthetic latexes and things are maybe more effective, but we still come out on top in the tests and everything, and find that natural latex and all our natural additives in there and so on are a better option over petroleum-based products you'll find in synthetic latexes and things. So I think those are the big things for us that go a long way there. And then, standing behind everything, service and support, and distribution in 60 or 70 countries now, and long-held distribution partners and OEM partners. So the support is deep, and product knowledge is out there. So people can find what they're looking for.
Is there anything specifically different about your valves compared to some of the other ones that are out there? Or?
I would say there's not now. Of course, when we brought them to market, we kind of worked on the shape quite a bit and things of that nature. But there have been a lot of similar products brought to market since. So there isn't a lot to differentiate on there right now. Of course, there's some other new valve products out there that are pretty interesting at the moment.
Yeah. Are you talking about these Santa Cruz ones?
Yeah, Reserve. Yep.
Yeah, I hate them. I am one of the few people there. I don't know. For me, it's just, for the most part, they're great. But I am one of those guys that likes to put my sealant through the stem, you know. And I also have $170 Park Tool air compressor, you know, doodad that doesn't measure the pressure because of them. And my 1-up pump that I carry on both my bikes doesn't work with them. It was like one failure after another. And whenever I flew my bike to Jamaica with my hand pump to pump the tires up with, and almost couldn't put air in my tires, I was like, this is it. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, there's some interesting aspects to that valve, and there's some other valves coming along like that. They're things we've thought about for a long time, and always, like you say, found some sort of drawback. We could design a new valve. I think we have on paper a number of times that could, obsolete every pump out there.
Right.
But nobody's gonna like that idea.
Right, and that was the thing that, like, for me, that was when that happened to me with my bike and being out of the country, was it just made me realize, like, well, one day if I don't have my pump for, like, let's just say I start carrying another pump, you know, well, then one day if I don't have my pump with me and I'm out on the trail, there's a possibility that I won't be able to put air in my tires by the other guys that are standing around me, you know. And at that point I was like, man, I'm the like cons are outweighing the pros, you know. And I would really love to have to see a new stem design come out that truly doesn't clog, you know, but doesn't make me run into all these other issues, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, to their credit, they came up with a way that does allow pretty good airflow.
Yeah, no, it does that great,
which is great. You know, for us and our rim designs, it's not something we think about on a daily basis because our rim design allows pretty much every tire to inflate with a hand pump if you want, or pump at most. So it's not front of mind for us. But our thing, we think about clogging a lot. We think about sealant application a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, a Presta valve core, 120 years old or whatever they are, was never intended to have sealant anywhere near it. That wasn't a consideration at the time. So there's probably something in that realm that could be addressed. And, you know, is it a problem to have to remove a core to add sealant? Not necessarily, but could it be better? Sure.
Yeah.
And clogging, I'd say, is our number one concern. Today you can pull a valve core and replace it for $1 or $1.50. It's not a big deal, but why waste something if you don't have to?
Yeah.
So
some of them, though, like just the bottom part that's actually in the rim will just, like, for whatever reason, it'll just get all kinds of stuff all over.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yep. I've seen that as well.
I literally, the same day I took these out of my wheels, I was changing my lady's tire, and her like valve stem just was like, it looked like somebody dipped it in latex and took it out, you know. And it was like, well, these things, they happen, but I don't know. Like I said, my experience was not so great, but they pump up great. I will say that.
Good airflow for sure.
Yeah. Do you watch much YouTube?
Here and there. I don't have any regular things I tune into, but started playing on a enduro dirt bike, or dual sport type dirt bike a couple years ago. And some of the other bad influences here in the office like to do that stuff too. So I watch a few of those videos. I gotta watch Win Masters do his thing, Win TVs and so on. But Yeah, I don't get a lot of time for just content consumption, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I just ask. I usually ask people what they like watching. You just answered it anyway. So sometimes you hear some fun ones come up that you're not expecting. It doesn't necessarily have to be biking related, So
Yeah, usually it's for me. It's like remembering some TV show from my childhood, or like some old SNL skit or something. Like, I'll bet that's on YouTube.
Right.
My wife and I'll look it up and entertain ourselves for an hour. But
Yeah. I was telling the kids about In Living Color not too long ago.
Yeah, there you go.
I had to pull up the old like Homie the Clown skits and stuff like that.
Yeah, some Fire Marshal Bill.
Right, exactly.
Early J-Lo on there.
Yeah, she was a fly dancer, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's funny. Now we're dating ourselves, man.
Yeah.
Well, hey, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down and chat with us today. I know you're a busy guy and you guys are getting ready to head over to Eurobike. So it was really fun sitting down, talking to you guys about what you got going on over there and kind of getting to hear the ins and the outs.
Yeah, appreciate it. And like I said, we're on our way to Eurobike, first international trade show for us in 2.5 years or more. So it'll be interesting to see what everybody's been up to and see some old friends. But yeah, hopefully there's a lot of new fun bike stuff to look at.
Yeah, that show seems to be like the place that things really get released. It doesn't seem like Sea Otter is like kind of taking the baton from Interbike.
Yeah, it changes, I guess. And so many of us now will just release things when they're ready because you've got your, I guess, the supply chains, the word of the day at this point. But
right.
You want to have things in stock and available for people. Apple kind of pioneered that in the electronic world years ago to, on launch day, it's in every store.
Right.
Ultimately, that's the way to do it.
Right.
That means it's not timed with we used to show things at Interbike in September you couldn't buy until March of the next year. Who's willing to wait that long for anything anymore? So the shows are still really interesting. It's, from the exhibitor side and seeing other friends that are exhibitors or brands you work with, you get to, go behind the curtain maybe and see something before it's ready. But generally, if it's on the show floor, you can buy it right away. So that's kind of nice.
That'd be a fun one to go to. Maybe I'll set my sights on it because I think they have a public, like there's some public days and then there's some like other days that are for insiders.
So this year it's the first year in Frankfurt. It used to be in Friedrichshafen, but it's a big show, just square footage wise.
Yeah.
And new location. It'll probably have a little bit different feel. Small town Germany on the lake versus a major city.
Yeah.
Probably a little bit more of an urban mobility angle to some of it. But I think there'll be some interesting things for sure.
Yeah. I used to live close to Frankfurt, so
okay,
way back in the day. Good times, man. Well, like I said, thanks again. Really appreciate it. Any of you guys that haven't, I'm sorry.
I just appreciate having me.
Yeah. Any of you guys that haven't stopped by the stand site, definitely go over there and check it out. It's notubes.com, notubes.com. You can get over there and check out their mountain and their gravel stuff. Great products. Like I've been running the Baron wheel for a while. They've been pretty bomb proof, so I definitely can stand behind those. And like I said, back in the days, you used to run the flow hoops, and they were nothing but good things to say about them. So definitely go over there and check it out, as well as their sealant. It's definitely they've been around since the very beginning. They're the guys. So don't forget when you're looking for something to go try out. Sometimes when you buy something that's a little cheaper, it's not better. I've found that out along the way. So those of you guys that haven't hit the subscribe button yet, please do that. Thumbs up if you enjoyed this and you're listening to it on YouTube. If you're checking this out on the podcast, do me the favor and go ahead and write a 5-star review. And like I said before, if you're thinking 4 stars, probably not worth your time. Anyways, really appreciate your time. Once again, Mike, had a great time chatting with you. Everybody out there, remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.